Wellness Week. We are live from World of Wellness. I am here, Jamie Dorley, CEO of World of Wellness, with the co-host, the one and only Joe Messino. And Joe, we're so excited to have a special guest on today. Me and him go back as far as me and you go back, 20 years. It's hard to tell because you guys look so young.
Oh, yeah.
But when I first met Todd Parker, I was working under the guidance of my mentor, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, and the Kaki family at Metagenics way back when.
Yep.
Right around 2000. And Todd did an incredible job as the inflammation category manager, which meant fish oils.
There you go.
And he did an incredible job not only bringing out the fish oil, but educating us on the EPA and DHA and really the quality control. And then lo and behold, when we started Nutritional Frontiers, I was at the trade show, and I met Todd and his company, and he's been an industry expert in omegas and now the new SPMs. So we're so fortunate to have him on here. I know he's really busy with the Supply Side West show this week.
It's this week.
Yes, it's this week. So he was generous enough with his time. So nice warm welcome. Thanks for joining us, Todd Parker.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jamie. I appreciate you guys, and greetings from sunny Southern California.
Sunny, huh? Yeah. Good. Nice.
Well, we are in Pittsburgh. I wouldn't say sunny, or I wouldn't say southern. It's just Pittsburgh. And great thing about Pittsburgh is the people here. We're not here because of the weather, obviously.
No.
And I
Good
spent many trips out in your backyard, Southern California, in the San Clemente area, right?
Yeah.
And beautiful, beautiful area. So thanks so much for joining us, Todd. And, he's been instrumental in Nutritional Frontiers and work with Dr. Weiner and myself on helping us launch the Omega 3D product.
Yep.
And then, I remember initially he was so helpful in us getting that launched. And you know what? Now we buy over 1 million soft gels at a batch. And then we were talking at the show. Thank you. And he helped us really get a better idea of SPM. So, Todd, maybe you can give us a little more background about what you're doing. I know you're one of the owners of the fish oil manufacturing plant. So maybe give us some more of your background for everybody listening out there.
Sure. Well, as you indicated, I spent 14 years with Metagenics. Just wore a lot of different hats there. I consider Metagenics to be my master's degree. It was a good education back then. Then I broke away and I worked with one of the largest providers of omega-3 finished products in North America, Marine Ingredients. That sort of morphed into other projects. Currently, I'm also working on a project with Dr. Jeff Bland, manufacturing and commercializing cod liver oil and salmon oil made in Alaska, sourced from wild-caught Alaskan fish. That might be something we might want to have a conversation about. But that's a kind of an overview of what I've been doing these last 3 decades.
Well, that's fantastic. And that's what I love about the network. And you mentioned your master's. I think it was a master's and PhD he got, right? 14 years of working with the Kakis and Dr. Bland. I mean, it's incredible, not only what you learn, but all the great people we meet, right?
Oh,
that's why I love going to the shows. And I missed it the last 2 years. I mean, Joe, the same way, right?
Miss the conferences. It's a community of people that you network with and all the ideas that come out of it. And it's just like a year's worth of marketing in a week or 3 days. It's too bad, but we're doing the best we can, bringing everything out.
Oh, yeah, and I love seeing everybody, too, because even though people may view it different companies, we're all in the same boat, right? We're all out there trying to help improve health, right? I love that Dr. Bland, he's retired how many times now? Retired from what, Joe?
Exactly.
Yeah, I see him at the show. He says, you guys are all my kids, he says. And he points to us, Designs for Health, Metagenics, Zymogen, Standard Process, Douglas. It's like you go around the whole room, and it's all people that worked on his guidance. So I'm excited what you guys are working on. So there's been a lot of questions we get just about omegas in general, and then maybe we'll get into more of the SPM. So I always tell them the quality control is really key because a lot of people are still buying omegas from Costco and Giant Eagle and stuff. So maybe you talk about that, the EPA and DHA content, and if they're only 30%, what's that other concentration of?
Yeah, well, that's less, I would say, as you know, a quality control type issue. It's more of a preference or an approach. So the starting point would be is what is the lipid content of the fish or the marine sources of the product? And traditionally, anchovies are considered to have, they used to call it 18-12, 18% EPA, 12% DHA. Now they call it more of a 30% oil. So that would be the natural lipid profile of the fish. The other lipids are just the naturally occurring lipids, most of them shorter chain fatty acids, because we know that the omega-3s are longer chain fatty acids. But there's a lot of ways to concentrate that up. The most common is using molecular distillation. The analogy I like to use for that is if you've got a handful of pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, and half dollars, and you want to have quarters and half dollars, you get rid of the pennies, nickels, and dimes. And then so you get an increasing ratio of the long chain fats. Therapeutically, I think the higher dosage, like your product, and by the way, I want to talk about something in a minute, but the fact that it has a really nice level of vitamin D in it is just perfect for what the research is showing right now. But once you get up to your sort of concentration, people can take less pills, less liquid, what have you, to get a targeted amount of the EPA, DHA, and let's not forget DPA, because DPA finds itself between EPA and DHA, and it has its own downstream resolving mediator pathways. So, and your product has better levels of that, to my recollection, than the average product on the market. So, hopefully that helps.
Yeah. So when people are buying 1,000, they say omega 1,000, that's at 30%. That's what you find naturally in fish. And we're doing with this molecular distillation is we're, increasing these concentrations of the EPA and DHA to get a more therapeutic result with a lot less of the amount of soft gels that you got to take.
Yeah, and Todd, that 1812, I mean, I remember that from way back. That was 101. And is there a good question that is, you said that's in anchovies. Is there a fish that has a higher yield, or is that the standard?
Really, that's about the highest level, and you get other species that have that
are
level.
low.
Yeah, there are other species that are lower, other species that are higher. Yeah. You think fatty fish, but there is one thing unique about the fact that most of our products are made from anchovy material, which is very abundant. But anchovies are higher in EPA than a lot of other fish, like salmon and cod, which can tend to be more equal or higher in DHA. And the reason most of our products are made from the anchovies is because back in Norway, when Jorn Dyerberg was doing his original research on these compounds, in Norway they were making a lot of margarine from anchovy oil, so they just kind of switched over. So, as you know, therapeutically, when you're dealing with people, there's times when people may benefit from higher DHA. There's times when they may benefit from higher EPA. But having said that, on a daily basis, the important thing is simply just to get your omega-3 levels up.
Well, I love it because we call you the world expert on omegas, and you are directly linked to the father of omegas, Dr. Jorn Dyerberg. So can you talk a little bit about your relation with him? And I looked up his studies go all the way back to 1971, Joe. And I saw over 450 published studies originally on triglycerides. And he's a cardiologist, correct?
Yeah. I'm very honored to call Jorn and his wife, Lisa, friends. I've known him now for about 15 years, but he's a remarkable man with a very incredible contribution to our industry. The field work, he literally put on a backpack with his associate, and they're both Danish cardiologists, and literally hiked through Greenland about 40 or 50 years ago when there was very little infrastructure, and they were carrying their HPLC in order to analyze the fat levels inside people there and the types of fats, carrying it on his back and setting it up in villages and doing all this field work. So it's extraordinary. And what came out of that is something that transformed our view on maintaining human health, which is these fatty acids that our bodies can't make are crucial for so much function and physiology and good health outcomes. And as you mentioned, after that original research, Jorn Dyerberg has been involved in a lot of different studies that back his earlier research, essentially.
What's so exciting about our network, Joe? We're going back to this guy that hiked through Greenland, 50 years ago with HPLC tester.
And
I could actually picture them
and
too.
there's no green in Greenland. It's all snow.
Yeah, it should be called Whiteland,
Yeah,
right? It's all ice, right? But no, that's amazing, and that's through Todd's directly, close personal friend, him and his wife, and that's how far back this goes. I know you remember when fish oil was really gaining momentum, probably about 25 years ago.
Yeah, really. I mean, it just started about then, really getting momentum. Before that, it was just unheard of. And people, I mean, if you were Italian, you ate a lot of anchovies. But other than that, nobody was getting it. And around here, you know what? We talk about that all the time, Todd. People think if they just eat any kind of fish, they're getting omega-3s, and they're not.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, it has to be certain fish that we kind of call fatty fish, cod, and with cod, it's mostly in the liver, by the way. But with salmon, it's more diffuse throughout the body. Anchovies, sardines, mackerel. But how many people do you know that are eating, say mackerel and bonita and even anchovies in North America? It's just not a common practice. So most people are, they're going to benefit supplementing. Also, if you eat a can of tuna, maybe that's 450 milligrams of omega-3. You can't really eat more than 2 cans of tuna a week and stay under the lead and mercury guidelines. So that's a gram of omega-3 if you're eating tuna, compared to what in many situations people need 2 to 4 grams a day for certain applications. So supplementation. Oh, I wanted to tell you guys about your product and why it's so perfect, because of the recent research. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, I'll forward it to you. But there's been
can you please?
I will. A super good study that's got a lot of press showing that a combination of omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D, let's just say, lowers people's expression of various autoimmune conditions across the board. And, and then so they recommend supplementing with omega-3 and vitamin D. We see that these two nutrients or classes of nutrients are involved in the body regulating inflammation, basically helping to resolve that inflammatory process. Vitamin D has its own pathway. Omega-3 has its own pathways, largely through these specialized resolving mediators. But the two of them together will dampen that unwanted chronic inflammation that's occurring in autoimmune conditions. And so, I mean, that's just another phenomenal application of your product.
Oh, it's so exciting. I love being in this field because the research is always continuing to evolve. And on something like this, the foundation hasn't changed, right? When Dr. Dyerberg and Todd have been talking about the anti-inflammatory properties, those haven't changed. It's only getting better. You brought up a couple of things I wanted to ask. People always ask about fish and farm-raised fish, and I'm of the opinion the farm-raised fish is toxic without the same content. Are those accurate statements?
There's absolutely no doubt that wild-caught fish is far more nutritious. And it can come down to one simple factor that we can use to differentiate the two, and that's what they eat. Yeah. And some people wonder, how important really is diet. Well, we can see it with these fish. The ones that are wild caught and that are eating real food, so to speak, have much healthier lipid profiles. Their health is robust, and they're far more nutrient dense. But the farm raised fish, of course, they're being fed like maybe a soy derived material or what have you, and their nutrient profile is subpar. So for sure,
that's a great point. We always say what you eat eats is just as important as what you eat, right? Exactly. Because same thing with beef. If it's fed grass and lacking hormones, then you can eat it. If it's fed soy and corn and milk and whatever else and loaded with antibiotics and hormones, they're selling it by the pound. It'll weigh more, but at what cost? And I think that's really it goes back to. And you mentioned Dr. Bland. I remember he was first showing the data years ago about this and the pro-inflammatory components of these foods. It's downright scary, right?
Very scary. And the problem is that the majority of the standard American diet is pro-inflammatory foods.
Yeah, and they're not even including fish.
And if
they do, it's from one of these fast food places. So the other question I had for you is dosage. So I always educate on the dosage of the EPA and DHA rather than the total oil. You had mentioned up to 2 to 4 grams. So Is that of the EPA and DHA concentrations when you go to those higher levels?
Yeah, I'm referring to the body of work that shows that increasing omega-3 levels helps to control blood triglycerides, which we know is really indicates sort of dishealth at a cellular level that makes cells basically shed fat into the bloodstream. And so taking the omega-3s kind of goes to the root cause of that. But that can be, I believe, 4 grams a day of EPA and DHA.
Which is exciting. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for the average person for maintenance, I think the research is supportive of at least getting at least a gram a day, and probably 2.
And that's nice because they can do that now with one soft gel, the omega-3D. I love the liquid. My wife actually asked last night, "What's this bottle of liquid fish oil on the counter for? Is that for me?" I said, "No, that's mine. Thank you." But in the liquid, which you helped create, of course, and manufacture for Nutritional Frontiers, that has almost 3 grams of omegas in it.
Yep.
24 plus. Yeah. 24 plus of the EPA and DHA. I know you're a liquid guy.
Yeah,
Joe.
and when you need the mega dose, and it's a big part of the Parkinson's protocol that we've been using, when you need to get 4 to 6 grams, sometimes that's hard to do with soft gels, even with ours. Yeah. So the liquid is the perfect alternative for that, to mega dose that 4+ range of grams.
Yeah, that's another question. So the dosing, we know 1 to 4 grams approximately of the EPA and DHA. You can get that with 1 teaspoon easily. Yeah. Or even 1 soft gel. And what about taking it? Is this once a day you can take the oil, or do you recommend to spread it out with food?
I think for the average person, the most convenient thing to do is to take their supplementation 1 time a day, assuming the regime isn't too extensive, in which case you would want to break it up. But the one thing that I would say is the research does show conclusively that omega-3s, fatty acids, are better absorbed with food. And it just makes sense after we eat, our body reacts, the pancreas reacts, the gallbladder, putting out enzymes that break down fat, and bile, which breaks it down so it can be better absorbed. So once a day with a meal, I think is great, because the thing about omega-3 is it's not necessarily, for acute situations. It's really something that you want to build those levels up in your cells over time, and maintain those levels. And then your body will have at its disposal these fats to control inflammation and to build cells and to do all the critical things that these fats do for us.
So, Todd, do you recommend even the liquid with food? Because I know a lot of nutrients with liquids, you can do them away from food. But with this, because of the high fat content, you recommend it with food?
Definitely. Take your omega-3s with food for several reasons. Probably the primary one is you'll absorb more of it into your body, and it'll get incorporated into your cells and improve your health.
Yeah, it's another way to incorporate a good fat with the meal, right?
Yeah.
Because people,
exactly.
if you're on a lower fat food program, which is fine, this is a great way to get a highly concentrated, proper fat in with their mealtime anytime. So I love that whole idea.
Sure, you can even add it to a salad.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, people don't have to have their teaspoon and their liquid right there while they're having the meal. They can certainly wait. It's just around, let's call it around the meal, not necessarily.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I always recommend people do their supplements in the morning before they leave, because that way their compliance is much higher. And then maybe at dinner time if you get a second dose in, right?
Right, yeah. When you're, because traveling with them or moving them around, it's not convenient for a lot of people. So that's a perfect way to do it. If you're doing it twice a day, you do it with breakfast and dinner.
And some of the research we look at is research you've probably taught us years ago. The one in particular was the JAMA study from St. Luke's Hospital, looking at the omega concentration in the cell membrane, where they were trying to get that to the 8 to 10%. So are there any updates on that? I know there's companies doing testing on it. I know Dr. Michael Wald spoke for us, and he says, look, if you test for it and you're low, what are you going to do? You're going to take the oil. If you test for it and you're good, what are you going to do? Keep taking it. So he was of the belief that just take it and follow the food program. So is there any newer data on that with the concentrations of the cell membrane?
I don't know of any, but I think that your point is a very good one. And that is that the essential thing is keeping your cells at a certain level of content of omega-3 for the long run. And I think that the research that's come out in the last 3 or 4 years, and a lot of it recently, just underlies the absolute, essential nature of these fats and all the myriad of benefits they can have for us. They're looking at a role in dementias, of course, because of probably inflammation, macular health, blood lipids, cardiovascular health, expression of inflammation in the joints. So the key is and I think to your point, people don't necessarily have to go out and take this test. It's interesting to do it, but if you're taking the right amount of omega-3s on a daily basis, minimum of 1 gram, you can be pretty well assured that your omega levels will go up into the healthy zone.
Well, there's really not a chronic disease state that does not have an inflammatory component. Inflammation is at the base of all chronic disease. So it could be colitis, it could be irritable bowel, it could be things you wouldn't normally think of with omega-3 application, but it would definitely play a big part.
Oh, absolutely. So I know we've been using the omega-3D that you manufactured, and we're getting fantastic results. I love how we updated it to the triglyceride form, the past couple of years, and people are really excited about that. And then, of course, we went with the liquid, which we're getting great results with. And then we brought the SPMs out, which I want to thank you again. You were very inspiring and motivating for me to do that. Sometimes I sit on the outskirts and wait, and then I finally pull the trigger. But we brought it out last summer, and it's been our #1 formula. So I get a lot of questions on it, and I explained that these are the 14, 17, 18 are really concentrated forms of these pro-resolving mediators that will help clean up the inflammatory debris. So that's a simple explanation. Can you explain a little more about the SPMs and how do you get to those concentrations, and most importantly, the benefit to people?
Yeah, I don't know if you're aware, but in the last few days, so I assume it's the most recent edition of all magazines, the old time favorite for old guys like us, National Geographic. I mean, is there more of an iconic source for truth and phenomenal, insightful information than National Geographic? So I was going through my news feed the other day, and I see this article in National Geographic entitled, novel approaches to inflammation may someday transform, healthcare, basically. And as I was reading the article, I thought, my goodness, they're heading towards, this is about resolving mediators, specialized resolving mediators. So anybody can look that article up right now, and it's a really a fascinating read. But what's happening with these compounds is we have the omega-3 that we talked about that's in our cells, and it gets basically broken down to small communication classes called these specialized pro-resolving mediators, lipoxins, resolvins, muresins, etc. And what these signaling agents do is they literally communicate with our immune cells, macrophages and various immune cells, and it prompts them towards resolving the inflammation and initiating the healing process. And what an extraordinary thing. Now, if we have adequate levels of omega-3 in our body, and we're just going through, we have a fairly normal profile, no major chronic inflammation or injuries or what have you, then likely your body will just be able to adequately make these active compounds as needed in different parts of the body simultaneously all the time. But a lot of people, if you're in more of a chronic condition or acute, as in after an injury or what have you, your body may not be able to manufacture adequate levels of these endpoint resolving mediators. So supplementing the diet with these intermediate compounds that you referred to, the 14, 17, and 18 oxylipids, the body can take those down whatever pathways it requires. So it's a perfect supplemental model to this. Now, if you read the National Geographic article, you'll see what they're trying to do is they're trying to match these endpoint compounds, like say resolvin D2, which is derived from DHA, to a very specific type of inflammation or inflammatory process. And apparently they're making good progress there. But it seems to me that the best way to do it is to support these pathways in the body, is to get your omega-3 levels up to that healthy range that we were discussing earlier, and if need be, to supplement in these intermediate compounds, which can be utilized by the body to help resolve inflammation and promote healing. It's really incredible science that's emerging.
I have two questions for you, Todd.
That's it. Only two after that.
I'm going to try to
this.
concentrate.
Very exciting.
All right. So we make specialized pro-resolving mediators. Do we make them only if we have a proper intake of omega-3s? Or do we make them as a natural chemical process in the body?
No, they are literally derived from omega-3s.
Okay.
And if you're in a low level of omega-3, by definition, your body's going to have a hard time regulating inflammation and promoting the healing process of rebuilding tissue.
Okay.
And over time, that's going to take wear and tear.
It's another example of toxicity and nutritional deficiencies, right?
Right.
The person's toxic, they have too much inflammation and too low of nutritional concentrations of maybe fish from food or even supplementation. It's the same thing we've been talking about for so long. So that's very exciting. Is it wow, there's so many questions out. So is it true that it'll actually clean up the inflammatory debris, or is it modulating that whole inflammatory cascade?
Yeah, I'd say it's more the latter. The resolving mediators aren't directly acting on cellular debris, but they do promote certain cells to clean up the debris and thereby facilitating an environment that's pro-healing and pro-restoration of tissue. And if you think about it, this is happening throughout our body simultaneously at all times. I mean, just small injuries that occur, that can happen internally, and response to pathogens can trigger this process. It's pretty omnipresent and ongoing, and it underlines the critical nature of keeping their omega-3 levels high, and I would argue taking these oxylipids if they're in more of a challenging situation.
So the part I hear is really sticking out, Joe, is cooling out inflammation so that the healing process can continue.
Yeah.
Or even be optimized. Started or at an optimal level, right? And I think that's why we're seeing some really unique things when people are taking these. I mean, you can share your story about your thumb injuries, right?
I had thumb injuries that would just not go away. Limited mobility, couldn't bend either thumb at the middle knuckle. Tried everything from chiropractic to laser to everything, and nothing worked. Even the transdermal cream didn't work. So I tried the SPMs, and we had just brought them in. And within a week, I had full mobility, all back, no pain, full mobility. It was incredible.
And
this is the only thing I did different.
Injury from years ago. I think you guys both share a love and a passion for martial arts. Joe is black belt. He had martial arts studio, boxing champion, Pennsylvania. He's got all the awards you do. But that was an injury where you probably just say, well, I'm just going to have it, right? And those are the kind of things we're hearing, Todd. That's just, it blows people away. The other big thing was the recovery from COVID, right? Myself included. I made a good recovery in the first few days, but you feel the fatigue lagging. My endurance wasn't there. And then I bumped up the SPMs to 3 twice a day. And wow, what a difference. In that first few weeks, it was tremendous, the difference. So what's some of the research on that? Because I know Dr. Tracy and our team, she shared some published data from the NIH about SPMs and COVID. So what's some of your thoughts on those things?
Well, my thoughts are essentially what you just said. This whole thing of controlling immune activity is critical in this situation. If people are overweight, they're going to be more prone to being and have an excessive inflammatory response. And if people go into COVID and they have elevated omega-3 and they have elevated vitamin D, the probability of them going into what they call the cytokine storm, which is a major overreaction, this is what's killing these people, is dramatically reduced. And the reason is because your body has the tools that it needs to control that inflammation and not let it get out of hand to the fact where it's literally melting your own tissues by your immune system. So this research is so fun. It's so fundamental. there's not a ton of studies on it, but we know that these are the pathways that control inflammation. It's just really super common sense. But the Norwegian government, they sponsored a study on vitamin D and omega-3 combination. In this context, it hasn't been published yet, but I'll really look forward to seeing what that's going to show us. And I'm certain it's going to confirm that in the era of COVID, and if you think about it, it's anything else. I mean, there's always illness that could arise. And what we don't want is we don't want our immune system to overreact to it. And the best way to ensure that is get your omega-3 up, get your vitamin D up, do what you can to control your body mass, eat healthy food, get rest. And if you fit in that category, the chances of having adverse events plummet.
Yeah, and that's for almost anything, right? I mean, this has really put the microscope on people's health in this country, which we know is terrible, right? And it could be this, but heart disease, cancer, diabetes, arthritis, all the digestion issues. It's really sad where we're at right now. And I think maybe it took something like this for people to be woken up and say, hey, this is an issue, right?
It was definitely a wake-up call. What about dosing, Todd? Where do you stand with general dosing, therapeutic dosing, specific dosing? Any guidelines there?
Well, as Jorn Dyerberg has said, and I don't think he'd mind if I quote him, the key is it's not really even about ratios so much. People were talking about, that certain other types of fats, obviously you want to limit them, but the real key is just to increasing your intake of omega-3. So I'll just start with that general statement, despite whatever your dietary patterns you may have. And then, people should probably work with their practitioner, because there's times when people would need, much more elevated levels in omega-3. And there's also times when that would be a waste of money. So I can't tell people what the sweet spot is here, but I think I indicated that I would like to see, based on the totality of the research, the average individual getting at least 1 gram a day. Maybe if you have a family history of heart disease or any particular condition here, you might want to increase that. Then obviously, if you're on a full-on therapeutic regime because you have elevated triglycerides, you may be taking up to 4 grams a day.
Okay, and that's for omega-3s. Now, what about the SPMs themselves?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know that was your
No,
question.
it's great.
No, we want both. Come on.
Well, the pre-resolving mediators that we're referring to, that get converted to the specialized pro-resolving mediators. People don't know for sure orally what the right dosage is, but interestingly, these compounds are actually found in human breast milk. So we do know that there is they can get into the body and transit through the digestive tract and be active, but the level is unknown. I think, Jamie, you just gave the perfect example. You started out with 3 once a day or what have you, and you doubled your dose, and you found you noticed a more significant outcome. So people are just going to have to figure out what's necessary for them. But what I would say is, if you are in a situation with autoimmunity or whatever condition you're presenting with, I would go on the elevated level side here, at least for the first couple of weeks. It's kind of a loading dose, and then just find where you can control your situation and stick with that.
Yeah, I was talking to Dr. Bob Rakowski about this recently, and he was doing the loading dose with the SPMs. He said it especially for stress resets, where people's adrenal glands are fried, they're exhausted, and they just can't get their body back. He's been loading that with theanine and some of the nutrients in the calm day. And
when you say loading those, that's 3 twice a day?
Oh no, Dr. Bob, yeah, much higher. Yeah, he's doing 1 to 2 soft gels every couple hours while they're awake. Yeah, so he can go up to, he says, 12 or more in one day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he's been always a little more aggressive. He says for that short period of time, because he says if not, he can't get that inflammatory cytokine storm under control.
Gotcha.
And he says a lot of times, if he doesn't get that result with people, compliance-wise, he'll lose them. So he's always been like that. Even with the old programs, he would do 4, 5, 6 shakes a day for a week. And he says, when someone's really intense, you got to do an intensive protocol.
But I think it bears stating at this point that people don't have to be concerned about ODing on anything here we're talking about.
No
question.
I'm sure there's an LD50, which is lethal dose, 50% of the population. But it'd be talking like a half a drum, 80 kilograms. It's a very, very, very non-toxic material.
Yeah, the question that comes up a lot too is people that, excuse me, are maybe on blood thinners or cardiovascular events. What's your thoughts about that with fish oil and SPMs?
Well, certainly, I think if people are going in for an operation, they want to tell their surgeon or their doctor about the supplements they take, and they'll probably be asked, quite frankly. And maybe around that time you want to down regulate or reduce your intake, I should say. But everybody always needs some of these. If you have a particular health situation that you're concerned about, then you discuss this with your doctor. But not taking omega-3s is not a solution for long-term good health and resilience.
Yeah, we always use the the rule of thumb if they're in surgery, maybe 3 to 7 days before. But somebody had come in on Saturday to the wellness week, and their doc said 1 month. I said, a month? Your whole body chemistry can start changing, right? So,
and not only that, surgery is going to cause inflammation, so you're going to need these after.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's some of the newer research you were sharing with us on the vitamin D and the SPMs and the omegas? What type of dose? Because wasn't that long ago 400 IUs, right? Was at the top of the scale, and we've gone as high as 10,000, and some of the studies showing 100,000 even for a short period of time. So, what's some of your research showing as far as D3 concentrations to take?
Well, I'll just answer that by telling what I did with myself during the whole COVID era, which I'm hoping we're emerging from, boy. But
we are emerging, if everybody else is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no. It appears to be globally that people are getting rid of the masks and, starting to live their lives again without fear, which is great. But I was taking 5,000 IU a day of D on kind of a preventative step, throughout this process. Now, I'm not sure. I've heard of people taking much more than that. It does have a point where if you're taking too much for too long, it can cause some side effects that that are unwanted. So be careful. I don't think that people should really be kind of making up their own. But I think anything up to 5,000, you're safe a day.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen at the Wellness Center. People doing 5,000 to 10,000 a day. I've only seen one person that anywhere close to 100 on their test scores. So I tell them, look, you got to recommend or ask the doctor when you're getting your blood work to just check that other box for D3 so we know. But it does take some time to get those doses up.
It does take some time, yeah. And I think most people are so deficient. You're probably
he's in Southern California.
Yeah, you probably weren't deficient.
The sun's coming through the blinds right over here.
Yeah. But most people that are not, in the industry or in that kind of a tropical climate are deficient so bad that 5,000 a day is not enough to get those levels up to that optimal range, that 70 to 90 or 80 to 80, 90 range, where nanograms per milliliter, where disease state just goes away all across the board.
Yeah, we work with a really interesting, I think he's the only functional medicine endocrinologist. He's out of Orlando, Dr. Lee. And he showed us data years ago. He spoke for us and was showing that optimal, way back then even, he said was 7 to 80 as a minimum. And he said he noticed that he saw a reduction in all the endocrine issues, right? Diabetes. He looked at even cancers and autoimmune conditions, but directly correlated with that. And he says it's just one variable, but it's a really nice one to look at because it's so inexpensive to take. It's so easy to take. And it does take a little bit of time to get those numbers up, but wow, what a difference on, you mentioned COVID and autoimmune conditions. We see this all the time at the Wellness Center. And that's why I love that idea. And we appreciate your input of recommending put it in with the omega-3 years ago.
It's the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get that natural form.
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically the two biggest nutrient deficiencies in the planet taken care of in one product. I mean, what more do you want than that? Exactly. I just want to, just so people know, what they actually are testing for in your body is the active form of vitamin D called 25-hydroxy vitamin D. That's what actually gets utilized by immune cells to help regulate inflammation. So that the body takes the vitamin D that either you consume, say D3 from supplemental form or from sunshine, and it converts it in the kidneys and other tissues into the active form that immune cells utilize to help regulate immune activity. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and some of these things that may inhibit the conversion or the activation of congested liver, right? Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, maybe some of the medications people are on. Maybe they don't break down fats well enough.
Yeah,
you know,
that would be a big factor. Absolutely.
And for a while, a lot of people, I think the prescription was a D2 they were recommending.
Yeah.
I think that's changed over the last couple of years.
I hope
but
so.
From the ergocalciferol to the cholecalciferol. So great points.
Vital nutrients, definitely vital nutrients. Now, the D in our omega-3D, is that coming from the cod liver oil? Is that fish-based?
I don't believe so. And yours is the D3, which is more bioavailable and utilizable by the body, essentially.
Well, great. We appreciate it. We're so fortunate to have Todd Parker. He's the fish oil expert, world fish oil expert. He comes to us with over 25 years of experience in the field of functional medicine. He was a category manager at Metagenics for 14 years now, where he earned his master's and PhD. And he's been involved behind the scenes with the team at Nutritional Frontiers with incredible quality, input in the formulations, helped us design the omega-3D soft gel, the omega-3 2800 liquid. And man, I appreciate all the, he was very motivating for us to bring the SPMs out. And when we finally did, he was right. He said, this will be your top selling formulation. And Todd, you were right. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Todd.
We got to do this more often. We appreciate you joining us today. And any parting shots, Joe, or questions?
No, I'm just going to say another thank you to you. This is an amazing addition to our line, the SPM. And it very seldom does a nutrient come out that really impresses me these days. And this one did. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Todd. We appreciate it. Looking forward to our liquid SPM down the road. And any parting shots for all your fans?
I just want to say thank you, gentlemen. That was a lot of fun. I could talk to you for hours. It's such really, honestly, such fascinating topics and materials. So yeah, keep taking your omega-3s out there.
Absolutely, and the SPMs. And if you want to join us, we're at the World of Wellness. We're celebrating the legacy of the international icon, Dr. James Weiner, at our Weiner Wellness Week. We're here all day today. Today's a short day. We're only here till 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be here throughout the week. And this will finish on Saturday, March 12th. If you want to join us live, we have healthy, free food from 11 to 2 during the week and all day on Saturday. We have our entire team here. Is the bar open?
The bar is open. It never closes.
We just served up some beautiful purple haze smoothies. It's a vegan smoothie. And we got some healthy treats back there and samples. So thanks so much for joining us, Todd. Thanks for everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon. God bless.